Look at the charging cable plugged into your phone right now. Then picture the drawer at home. You know the one. With the tangled pile of USB-C cables that all look completely identical. Same little oval plug on both ends. Same shape. Impossible to tell apart. Here's the strange part. One of those cables can charge a laptop in about an hour. Another one, that looks exactly the same, will take all night. One can move an entire 4K movie across in a couple of seconds. Another one, physically identical, chokes and takes minutes. And there is no way to tell which is which just by looking at them. So why are cables that appear completely the same secretly so different underneath? And how are you supposed to know which one you're actually holding? Today we're breaking down every hidden difference packed into that one tiny connector, and by the end, you'll understand your own cable drawer better than most tech reviewers do. Real quick before we dig in, make sure you're subscribed. A lot of you watching aren't yet, and this is exactly the kind of thing I break down every week. Now, to understand why two identical cables behave so differently, you have to understand the one fact that causes all the confusion in the first place. Here it is. USB-C is not a standard. It's just a shape. That's the whole root of the problem. When people say USB-C, they think they're describing what a cable can do, but they're only describing what the plug looks like, that reversible oval connector. What actually travels through the cable is a completely separate question, and it's decided by the wiring and the chips hidden inside. So the connector is like a doorway. Two doorways can look identical, but one opens into a closet and the other opens into a stadium. That's USB-C. The shape got standardized. Everything behind it did not. And once you know that, every frustrating cable moment you've ever had suddenly makes sense. So let's walk through exactly what those hidden differences are, starting with the one you feel every single day, charging power. Charging is where most people first get burned, and here's why. Every USB-C cable is rated for how much power it can safely carry. And that number varies wildly. A basic cable might only handle around 15 watts, fine for topping up a phone overnight, useless for anything bigger. Step up and you get 60-watt cables, then 100-watt cables, and at the very top, cables that can push a massive 240 watts, enough to run a gaming laptop off the same little connector that charges your earbuds. The system that negotiates all this is called USB power delivery, and it's genuinely clever. Your charger and your device have a tiny conversation and agree on exactly how much power to send. But here's the catch that gets everybody. The cable itself has to be able to carry that power, and to handle the high stuff, it needs a special little chip baked inside called an E-marker. No chip, no high power. The cable just refuses. So if you've ever plugged your laptop into a powerful charger and watched it crawl, it probably wasn't the charger's fault at all. You were almost certainly using a cheap cable that caps out at 60 watts and simply can't carry more. Same plug, totally different ceiling. And charging is only half the story, because the other thing racing through that cable is data, and that's where the gap gets absolutely enormous. Data speed is the widest hidden gulf of them all, and it's staggering once you see the numbers. The slowest USB-C cables run on an ancient standard called USB 2.0, which moves data at 480 megabits per second. And here's the part that'll annoy you. A huge number of the USB-C cables sold today, including tons of the ones that come in the box with your devices, are exactly this slow. They were built to charge, not to transfer. Move up the ladder and you hit 5 gigabits, then 10, then 20, and at the top end, USB 4 cables that hit 40 gigabits, and the newest ones released in late 2025 that reach a blistering 80 gigabits per second. Just do the math on that gap. The fastest cable is over 150 times quicker than the slow one. Same connector on both ends. So plugging in an external drive with the wrong cable is the difference between a file copying in 3 seconds and you standing there for 3 minutes wondering what's broken. Nothing's broken. You just grabbed a charging cable and asked it to do a data job it was never built for. And you can't see any of this from the outside. The plug tells you nothing. Now, speed and power are what most people know to look for. But there's a third hidden talent that even a lot of tech people forget USB-C can do. That third thing is video. Yes, some USB-C cables can carry a full display signal, and some can't do it at all. This is called DisplayPort Alt Mode, and it's the feature that lets you plug your phone or laptop straight into a monitor or a TV using nothing but a USB-C cable. When it works, it's magic. A single cable drives an entire 4K screen, sometimes even 8K on the newest ones. Picture it. You rock up to a hotel, you want to throw your phone's screen onto the big TV, and you've got a cable right there in your bag. But when it doesn't work, it fails silently and confusingly. You plug into the screen, and nothing happens. No error, no message, no pop-up telling you what went wrong. Just a black display staring back at you. And 9 times out of 10, it's not the monitor and not the phone. It's the cable, which was simply never wired to carry a video signal in the first place. Those extra wires cost more to build, so budget cables just leave them out. So the exact same shape that charges your phone every night might also run a giant external display, or might be completely blind to it, and there's no dot, no label, no way to tell until you actually try it. It's the most invisible difference of the whole bunch. And speaking of cables that can do everything, there's one tier that sits above all of this, and it's the one that quietly does the most. That top tier is Thunderbolt, and its close cousin USB 4. Here's the thing that confuses everyone. Thunderbolt uses the exact same USB-C plug as everything else we've talked about. Identical, but under the hood, it's the premium everything cable. A Thunderbolt cable carries the fastest data, up to 40 gigabits on Thunderbolt 4, and a huge 80 on the new Thunderbolt 5, plus video, plus power, all at once, all through that same little oval. This is the cable that runs those docking stations where one connector suddenly powers 2 monitors, an external drive, and charges your laptop all at the same time, off a single plug. It's the closest thing to that original one cable for everything dream actually coming true. The good news is that the industry is slowly merging Thunderbolt and USB 4 together, so they increasingly play nice with each other. But the bad news, again, is that it looks exactly like the $5 charging cable in your drawer. The most powerful cable and the weakest cable are visually the same object. Which brings us to the real question. If you genuinely can't tell any of this by looking, how are you ever supposed to know what you've got? And that's the final piece, because the confusion isn't entirely your fault. It was made worse by the people in charge of naming all this. For years, the group that governs USB kept renaming the standards, sometimes retroactively. The speed ones called USB 3.0 got renamed to 3.1, then renamed again to 3.2 Gen 1, all for the exact same thing. It was a genuine mess that even experts complained about. But here's the good news, and it's actually recent. As of 2025, they've finally pushed a simpler system. Instead of decoding cryptic generation names, cables and packaging are now supposed to just print the plain number that matters. USB 40 gigabits per second for the speed, or 240 watts for the power, right there on the label. So the real trick, the one thing to take away from all of this is simple. Stop trusting the plug and start reading the cable in the box. The little icons and wattage numbers printed near the connector are the only honest signal of what's actually inside. Look for the speed rating, look for the wattage, and if a cheap unbranded cable claims to do everything for almost nothing, it's lying. USB-C promised us one cable to replace them all, and in a way, it delivered. It just forgot to mention that the cables themselves would still be secretly wildly different. Next time you reach into that drawer, you'll actually know what you're grabbing. So here's my question for you. How many USB-C cables do you think are in your house right now? And do you have any idea what a single one of them can actually do? Drop your number in the comments.